Lady and gentlemen. I'm going to talk a little bit about two things that I like to talk about. Steinway Lyngdorf and myself. So we're here upstairs with the Steinway Lyngdorf presentation, and I'll talk to you a little bit about a lot of the technology that I have been involved with over many, many years. This is a little bit of my history as far as I can remember. Now I'm 71, so my memory is not so good anymore. But I got interested in hi-fi audio when I was 10 years old. In 1963, what happened then? The Beatles happened. So I lived in Denmark, and in Denmark we had only one channel radio, only one. Everything else was prohibited, no private radio, nothing. And pop music was not considered fine. So they had pop music only 1 hour per day and only on weekdays, after school. So I heard the Beatles first time and I thought I have to buy myself a tape recorder and record their songs from the radio. And of course it was a microphone in front of the terrible radio. And so I bought myself a tape recorder and I worked my ass off to buy some hi-fi so I could listen to the Beatles. That was how I got started. Then I went through high school and I was making loudspeakers for my friends. And I left high school with the worst grades in the history of the school. And then I had 2 jobs. I was working with some marketing for 3 weeks, and then I worked with shipping for 3 weeks. And I thought, now absolutely I'm ready to start my company. So I started my company in 1973. And started importing products from the UK primarily. And I was selling to hi-fi retailers. But in 1980 I started Hi-Fi Klubben, which now is Europe's largest hi-fi retailer. We have 100 shops. So that's how I can afford to spend money on technology. In 1983 I started Dali loudspeakers because I thought, oh, what the heck, we can also make loudspeakers. We're in Denmark. And Denmark have so many good speaker engineers. So I got hold of some of the best engineers. Of course, Bryl and Kjær, all the guys that made the best measurement equipment came from Denmark also. So we had super good connections. So we started Dali. And you probably know Dali loudspeakers now. It's still my company. And I love the company, fantastic people there. They make fantastic product every year, better products. Then in 1988, I bought NAD Electronics. Actually, I was their distributor, and every time they needed money, they came for me, and I bought some shares, and all of a sudden they said, Peter, now you have 68% of the shares, so now you have to run the company. So I owned NAD. And in 1989, I bought Snell Acoustics, which was at that time a really, really well-known and highly regarded American speaker company. And there we developed the world's first room correction system. 1992, the Snell DSP 6000 room correction system. That was before the internet. So it was very, very early, but it was fully digital. It had a resolution of 0.6 hertz, and I'll get back to that. In 1994, I bought Gryphon audio. That was because my good friend Flemming Rasmussen, he had some financial. I bought the company. I sold it back to him a few years later. And in 1996, I founded TacT Audio. Unfortunately, together with a partner who screwed me terribly. Excuse my language. In 2002, I founded Lyngdorf Audio. So I thought, this company is going to have my name, then I'm obliged to work there, right? Mm-hmm. It's my name on the line, so not that I'm a proud person. Of course I am, but. Then I did Argon Audio, which is primarily known now in Europe, will be coming to Asia also. Steinway Lyngdorf, 2005. 2015, I co-founded Purifi Audio, And some of you will have heard about their technology, Class D, world-leading Class D amplification, world-leading speaker driver technology. I started with that with some of my partners from my earlier career. So now we can go to the next slide.
Bruno.
So today, if I appear a little bit confused, it's because I still don't have an education, but now my company has 4 factories, we have 100 shops, we have around 46 engineers, all in audio, developing, and we have 11,050 employees, something like that. Going back to room correction, I get a little bit annoyed when I see some companies saying that they are the pioneers in room correction, and they started 10 years ago. 1992, we got an award for the world's first room correction system, December 1992. That was a little bit earlier than everybody else. I took that technology into NAD, electronics. But the room correction system cost $10,000 at that time for just the correction technology. And NAD was making amplifiers that were selling for $200. So when we brought out an NAD room correction system for $10,000, people said, what the? It cannot, you know, that's why I started TacT audio. We can run to the next one. And later on, Lyngdorf Audio, which I'll focus on here because we have very special technology. All part of the technology we're using in our product is developed inside my company with engineers we've been working with since day one. So on the digital amplifier technology, I can show you the next clip. We came out with the Millennium amplifier in 1998. The inventor of the technology is my good friend Lars Risbo. He's also a partner now in Purifi. He was working for an American company, and he had this idea to make a fully digital amplifier. And mind you, that was in 1996. He came to me and said that's what he wanted to do. And he was working for a famous American company, and they looked at it and said, can we make a cheaper amplifier this way? And he said, it's going to be more expensive, but it will sound better. Then the answer was, not interested. Has to be cheaper, otherwise we're not interested. So I worked with him, I financed all the patents, and Lars and his team of engineers made close to 50 patents in a span of 3 years. So I financed all the patents. To make the world's first fully digital amplifier. And in the year 2000, Lars decided to sell the technology to Texas Instruments. And I got the money back from the patents. So I was financially quite okay again. And Lars became head of engineering for Texas Instruments. They made a big engineering division in Copenhagen. So Lars was head of engineering, making Class D amplifiers, the fully digital amplifier, digital control systems, digital everything for Texas Instruments. But I got an agreement with Texas Instruments when they bought the patents, and anything they did in this field was available to my company. So we always kept very close relationship with Texas Instruments Copenhagen. And the engineers there loved to work with my engineers, so we always were using all the best parts of the technology. And one of the key parts of this technology that Lars and his team invented was to control the playback level with the power supply. When you think about it, if you have very efficient speakers, let's say you have horn speakers with efficiency or sensitivity of 110 dB for 1 watt, Do you want to have a 500 watt amplifier? Absolutely not. Because if you have a very powerful amplifier, your preamplifier has a volume all the way down and is very noisy. And you amplify all the problems by 23, 28 decibels. So the solution, of course, is not to amplify, but just when you want to play softly, you reduce the voltage available for the D to A conversion. So we always, in the Lyngdorf and Steinway Lyngdorf product, control volume with the power supply. The problem then is power supply has to be perfect, because what we do is we switch with PWM at very high rate, very high precision, everything pre-calculated, but we switch from a steady state DC voltage. So we create the DC voltage without noise. So we have done power supplies that have minus 137 dB signal to noise. That's difficult. And we can regulate that voltage up and down. So for all of our systems, when you turn down the volume, you don't strangle the singer. Music is the same. We don't touch the music. There's no potentiometer. There's no volume control in the signal. So in practical terms, for instance, our 400 watts amplifier, from 400 watts down to 1.6 watt, we regulate by the power supply. Below that, we do digital attenuation with 32-bit word lengths. This is extremely good for stereo, but if you make a multi-channel system, I tell you, it is the only way to make a system that will never produce any noise, buzz, or anything. Because in a multi-channel system, you have room correction of some sort, you have level matching, you have EQ for individual speakers, you have crossovers, and all of that is eating off your bits. If you then also do digital attenuation, you are not in a good place. So by having the volume control at the end of the system rather than in the beginning of the system is a huge advantage. And the fact that it's also when the power supply is so perfect, forget about any power conditioners. It is not relevant. You cannot produce a signal into the 220 watt input that will make any noise to the speaker. Not possible. Cannot happen. In a normal, normal power supply is 2 capacitors and the transformer and rectifier. And that maybe has signal to noise 40, 50 dB or something. The rest is taken care of with a feedback loop that goes together with the signal and minimize the ripple and all of that. Ooh, why not get rid of all of that? No volume control. We cannot have a difference in left and right channel. Cannot exist, cannot come. No way it comes. 20 years from now, our preamp is going to be exactly the same. So for our big Steinway systems, we can, from our processor, multi-channel processor, we can handle up to 256 end channels. We send the signal and data out to the system with a Cat6 cable. We can daisy chain 30 amplifiers, and the last one will have exactly the same performance as the first one. No detectable difference. So for the multi-channel also, we regulate out where the speakers are, out where the amplifiers are, on the power supply. And when we turn on the system, all the amplifiers will be programmed with the EQ for the speaker, with the crossover for the speaker, with the time delays for the speaker, everything, every time you turn the system on. So if you have a huge complicated system, 20 amplifiers, or D to A converters, which they are in this case, if one of them fails, they don't. But if one of them fails, we just have to take it out, put another one in, give it the same number on the back, turn the system on, and it will be programmed like the previous one. So all of this, you know, if people have a complicated home theater system, if something goes wrong, oh, you have to start from scratch. You have to get hold of the engineers. We've designed it also for the mega yachts, where we've sold a lot for mega yachts. We delivered 100 a system, just one system, 1.5 million euros for mega yachts last year. If a mega yacht has a system and something breaks, our principle is we can call the chef. I said, stop cooking, fix the system. And we'll just tell him what to do and he can fix the system. So that's a little bit about digital amplification. But this is not Class D. This is fully digital. Class D is the same as analog. It is just internally switching rather than running an analog system. But the input-output is the same as analog. So for Class D amplifier, you need a preamplifier. Okay? For the fully digital, we just need the digital information. I'll get back to room correction because there we have also done something that is entirely different than anybody else. Maybe even more special than the Class D or the fully digital amplification. But just look a little bit about our products. The first product that came out was the Model D speaker system. It's a dipole. You can go to the next slide. Or next one again. You'll see it later. Back again, sorry. It came about because we were selling Lyngdorf products. And we had already done RoomPerfect and a lot of the technology we've been working with for many years. And I had a guy calling from Sweden and he said, I bought a Lyngdorf system and it's the first time I hear piano sound like a piano from a hi-fi system. It sounds exactly, and I can hear when it's a Steinway, when it's a Yamaha. It's fantastic. I already called my friends at Steinway & Sons. He knew the owner of Steinway & Sons and the president. He said, I have an invitation, you can come to New York and meet the management and the owner. They're so excited to learn more about this. So I went there and we had a long discussion and so on. I said, okay, I'll show you what we can do. So we'll come in half a year, 1 year, come and show you a system that will reproduce the Steinway grand piano so that your Steinway piano tuners, if they cannot see what is happening, they will believe it's a Steinway when we play the system. For good recording, they'll believe it's a Steinway standing in front of them. And we'll do that in virtually any room, not a bathroom, but any normal room will do that. And the CEO just said, well, if you can do that, absolutely we can talk business. So we then presented this system to Steinway about a year later. And originally, it was going to be called just Steinway. But when they heard the system, the CEO said, Peter, this must be a Steinway & Sons product. Not only Steinway, it's a Steinway, this is as much Steinway as anything Steinway. But you have to promise that you protect the name with your life. I said, yes, sir. So that was a quick version of the story with Steinway. So we've been working with them for 17 years now. And then we could go on a little bit more. What is different? Of course, Steinway & Sons is arguably the best brand in musical instruments. You know, of course, there's Stradivarius, but factory is not there anymore. They cannot make a violin like that anymore. Piano is in business and they do 96 to 98% of all the concert pianos in the world. So they're number one. They're the Rolls Royce of pianos, but there's no Bentley, right? So I think it's the finest and most powerful brand in music. Steinway & Sons, you know a lot of the artists and so on.
Yeah.
And funny story about Steinway pianos, Do you know who invented the bass reflex port? You know, it's also called the Helmholtz resonator. Some of you know that. Dr. Helmholtz was a German scientist, and he worked with the original Steinway, designing the Steinway grand piano. And for the Steinway grand piano, he invented the Helmholtz resonator. So if you see the iron board in the Steinway with the holes, they're Helmholtz resonators. Same as a bass reflex port, but working at higher frequencies. So now you're much more clever than when you came in. Yes, but it's interesting. And of course, Steinway, when they brought out their original grand piano with all the new technology invented by Dr. Helmholtz and Mr. Steinway himself, they took a scientific approach to make a better piano. Everybody else before that, they were just tinkerers. They tried another kind of wood, they tried to bend it differently, but they worked out all the mathematics, all the acoustics, and all the mechanical things to make a better piano. It was a scientific endeavor. Exactly the same that we are. Science to produce better sound. Before Steinway brought out the grand piano, the most important keyboard instrument was the harpsichord. You know, bing, 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 right? The harpsichord is plucking the strings. It sounds very pretty, but it does not have dynamic range. You know, you cannot make it sound louder with the same piece of music. No matter how much you push, it's the same loudness. So it didn't have the ability to play softly and loud. What is it called? It's called pianoforte, which means soft, loud. And that was a big thing in the keyboard instrument. And a couple of years after Steinway came out with the grand piano, the School of Music in Paris, they had a very, very cold winter. Very cold winter. They took most of their harpsichords and burned them in the chimneys to keep warm because they were so fed up with them. So that's a little bit of a Steinway story. So yeah, we can run a little bit. I talk too much. This is our model B. You know, the Steinway has different letters for the different models. The B is they call the big piano. The Model D is even bigger, so they call it the damn big piano. So that's our Model B. This is our Model A. Then I have to go to RoomPerfect. Everybody knows about room correction, right? So actually back in the 80s, we had a couple of I was always on the product board in NAD Electronics before I bought it also. We had some really good engineers. And they were always talking about one day it will be possible to do digital correction for rooms. So it was always swirling around my head. And then at Snell Acoustics, I said, let's find some good engineers who can help us do this. And then we came out with the first system, December 92. And you know, it was so early, there was no internet. We could plug into the telephone line and we could send a letter or something. It was very difficult to work with technology at that time. And our engineering was in the US, and I was in Denmark. I was the guy doing listening tests and saying this is what we need to do and so on. But in the beginning, we did the same mistake that everybody is doing now. And what is that mistake? That is, you make a measurement and you see a curve, and then you think, measurement look like this. So whenever there's a hole, we have to gain. Whenever there's too much, we have to reduce. And then we try again, and we see, looks better. Looks better. Yes. That was exactly what we did from 1992 until 2002. And we sold a lot of correction systems. And people looked at these curves and said, oh, so now this is perfect. But everyone said, but I'm not quite happy with the sound of my amplifier now. The amplifier, there's something we have to fix. So they started to work with cables and power conditioners and blah, 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 blah. They even tried to switch capacitors inside and everything like that. Every time they spent a few hours on something, they thought it sounded better. But I realized it's a correction system. It makes it sound different, but it's not doing the right thing. And I'll tell you a little bit of a story about how all of a sudden I realized everything we spent 10 years doing is totally wrong. I was at a show in Germany, and at that time we made our old correction system. And all the time when I did correction for a system, I had to manually manipulate. Oh, there's a dip, we know we cannot increase that, so I have to change the target curve. By the way, target curve was my invention, to call it a target curve. So I manipulated it to sound good. But my principle was already then to have woofers in the corner, if you can do that, speaker on the wall, because then the sound comes very directly, very pushy towards you. It gets a lousy frequency response, but we can fix that with the correction system. And at least we had a sound that was really, really punchy. You can hear examples upstairs later on floor 29. So it worked pretty well, and everybody was stunned that, wow, this is tight. Really sounds much more tight than other systems. But then I went to the show in Frankfurt, Germany, and the organizers had asked me to compete with another guy about how to handle your room. Because there was a very important acoustical, can I call him scientist? Maybe, maybe not. But anyway, he was an acoustical guy, and he had developed something called Cara, which was a computer system where you could put into your computer the shape, the size of your room, whether you have soft material, hard material, and so on. And you could even put in the brand of your speaker, which model. And the system would then calculate and calculate and calculate, and it will find out that you have to put, for instance, in a room like this, you put one speaker here, the other speaker would probably be somewhere there, and your sofa would have to be there. So, of course, the two problems with that, one is your wife is going to be absolutely bananas. The other thing is, what he had actually done was to make sure that you get a good frequency response because of the placement of the speaker. And that's what a lot of people still are doing. But of course, the way he did it was kind of hopeless because you had to rearrange your life. But I demoed my system, and of course the bass was tight, and I played something with drums and the kick drum and the bass, and it boom, 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 boom. He had made a demo CD only with slow flowing music. Very slow, nice, mellow, beautifully flowing music. Nothing with transients. And I told them that the advantage of my system is we get a good impulse response, power response in the room, we fix the frequency response after. And then Professor, not only Dr. Professor also, Tomanak, he said, yes, in his German accent, Mr. Lyngdorf, you probably know that if you have the best possible frequency response, you also have the best possible impulse response. And then I looked up, of course not. Of course not. The fact that you get a very good frequency response is because you randomize everything. Because what is happening with his setup is you play the speaker, You get some sound directly to the listening position. You get something from the rear wall, from the side wall, from the ceiling, from the floor. It comes to your seating position at a different time and a different phase. What has been to the back wall and turn around comes out of phase. But he had calculated so that if one response is like this, the other one is like this, the third one is like this, the third one is like that. And what are you getting? You're getting something with the most chaotic time response, because bass comes at 6 different times. Not the same time. You put the speaker in the corner, only one serving. You get all you need in one go. So I said to him, yes, Mr. Tomanak, your theory is correct, but only in a 2-dimensional space. And he said, what do you mean? I said, it's very simple. The fact that you get a flat frequency response is because of the chaos you created. And then he stepped around on his heel, like an old German general. Obviously, you don't know anything about signal theory. And he walked home, and he's never been seen again. The thing, he realized at that time, fuck. Sorry, there's no more ladies. So I went back to Denmark, and I said to the engineers, listen guys, everything we've done so far, we completely forget what we've done so far. Because just the fact that we measure one response in a location means nothing. Virtually nothing. And when you think about it, what we did and what everybody else is doing nowadays is, if you have a room, let's say the speaker's there, this side is a hard wall, the other side is a soft. There you have a thick curtain. That side, hard wall. From that side, when you measure, you get reflections. All the reflections create something that is out of phase. So you get dips in the response. The other side, curtain, you have no reflections. So the side with a lot of reflections, you have the dips, and the system thinks, oh, I have to increase the high frequencies from that side. Huh? Really? From the side where you have all the reflections? That's exactly what you don't want to do. The other thing is, when you measure response in the room, you see some of the dips. Some of the dips come from the fact that bass disappears from the room, but other dips in the response comes because of cancellations. And the cancellation happens between 2 hard walls, for instance. In the middle, you cannot reproduce a frequency that is speed of sound divided by 2 times that distance. So if you have a 5-meter hard wall room, 340 divided by 10, 34 hertz is not reproducible in the middle of the room. You cannot play it. Doesn't work. But everybody else is still trying to increase the 34 hertz. It will not be audible where you want to listen to it, but it will be audible everywhere else. Another thing is, if you try to get the frequency response to look really, really nice on a piece of paper, because of all the small variations in the measurement, what is the output of your amplifier going to look like? It's going to look like this, and a lot of things like this up in the mid-high frequencies. All of this is what you listen to when you hear the direct sound from the speaker. Do you think that's good? No, it's not good. You don't want your amplifier response to be like that. Absolutely not. So with RoomPerfect, I hired 30 engineers over a span of 6 months and said, now you do a new room correction system. And once we were done, we had RoomPerfect. And I was close to broke. The first demo I had to go to Germany. After that, I was sleeping in our demo room at the Frankfurt show. I couldn't afford a separate hotel. I was so stubborn to get this technology rolling. But the first time, honestly, the first time I heard the result of RoomPerfect, I thought that it doesn't do much. The other system was always, wow, it's completely different. It didn't do much. And then I listened some more and I said, that's my room problems. Now I have a nice room. I have a really good sounding room, but my speaker sounds the same. Because it's a room correction system. Corrects for your room problems. And it assumes your speaker is a good speaker. It doesn't assume your speaker is a lousy speaker, because you probably wouldn't buy a lousy speaker, right? You buy the speaker you like. Of course, you can modify the tonality and so on if you wish to do that, but your speaker is going to sound the same. Your room problems is going to disappear. Honestly, the guy who came up with the most brilliant idea in this project, when I heard about his approach, I thought, my goodness, the guy is crazy. And he was our chief engineer. And I calculated very quickly, he got 16,000 euros per month, times 9 months, several pay, that's 130,000 euros I have to pay this guy to get rid of him. That was how crazy I thought it was. But he was absolutely right. So we did RoomPerfect 20 years ago. We did not change the correction algorithm after that. Never. If you hear any of the other guys working on room correction, they come with a new version every 6 months. Oh, now we fix this, now we fix that, now we fix that. We call it RoomPerfect. We didn't call it Room Almost Perfect. Or maybe next year perfect. We called it RoomPerfect, and we were, that was a bang-on good investment. 5 minutes more, and then I'm going to take questions. And these are some of the installations we've done with Steinway systems. That's the biggest one we've done so far, 400-seat theater in Los Angeles. Before they had a JBL system with conventional amplification and so on. And when we heard the JBL system, of course it sounded like this, it was not a good system. But it was so noisy, even at idle. You could walk around and then you could hear what is the dispersion characteristics of the speakers. And I promised the owner of the theater that once we've installed the Steinway system, if you can hear any hum, buzz, or noise, when we turn up the volume 100%, you don't have to pay. You can put your ear on all the woofers, and there will be no noise. And we did a 78 channels system, and there was no noise. We tested the system we could reproduce. We could do 124 decibels in the middle of the theater with our line source. Hearing protection, yes, but that's what we could do before Klubben. But even when we then paused the Blu-ray player, there was no noise, nothing. That's how perfect the technology works. There's no way you can get noise into the system. First on original Model D, dipole. With Steinway products, we work only with dipoles or with boundary speakers. Why is that? If you take a conventional speaker, put it on the floor, sounds beautiful on the front side. How does it sound on the other side? Not so good, right? Between not so good and horrible. But the sound from the other side is going to hit the walls. It's going to come back to you. And that's why a lot of people get so frustrated. They need to do damping material and acoustical treatment and everything like that. So we have the speaker either on the wall, very, very close to the wall, or it's a dipole. Because if you design a proper dipole, sound that comes as a reflection sounds exactly like the direct sound. So from our speakers, we don't get any sound in any direction that sounds bad. Can you get that? There's nowhere the sound from the speaker itself sounds bad. We try to go for placement of woofers in the corners. Why do we do that? Because if you place the speaker all the way into the corner, the woofer, where can the sound go? Only one way. If you place it 1 meter from the corner, it can go da, 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 da. And finally, it'll go towards you. With RoomPerfect and proper time alignment, everything like that, we can regularly cross over 300 hertz to the subs. So we don't call them subs anymore, we call them woofers. Upstairs we cross over at 250 hertz. For the S system you can come and hear this. That's in the middle of a piano. Nobody can hear that we're crossing over in the middle of the piano. Absolutely not. If you live in an apartment, our system, because of the boundary effect, you know, if you start the sound from the woofer there, it's going to run parallel to the wall. It will not push the walls. RoomPerfect will take the resonances out of your room. So we test it with the same playback level. We reduce noise to the neighbors by between 12 and 18 decibels. That means if you live in an apartment, now you can play your music without disturbing the neighbors. That is a huge benefit. Makes a bigger difference than different cables. I think I'm ready to take some questions. If you have some, otherwise I'll just keep talking. Okay. There's a heck of a lot of things I forgot.
That system up there with the 2 woofers and small speakers in the room, I saw at the back that there was a dispersion, V-shaped dispersion. That's a dipole?
Yes.
But towards the wall?
Yeah, that's because we made the tweeter section of that as a dipole. That was actually my idea. Not that I'm brilliant, but sometimes, every 5 years or so, I get a good idea. Or let's say I get a lot of good ideas, in my opinion. But that was a workable one. It really makes sure that at about 45-degree angle, you get slightly less high frequencies. But you get the reflection from the walls, which we absolutely want. So when we work with acoustics, if we have speakers that are designed to be played in a room, we do very, very little room treatment. Usually not necessary, not desirable. You can have a little bit on your rear wall, nothing on your side walls, nothing on that wall. You can have a carpet if you like the color. It's not necessary with the Steinway system. So some of the best systems we've made, you can scroll over to the one of the that one, yeah. Oh, this was our first line source dipole system that we installed in Singapore more than 10 years ago. And that was a high-end customer who had the most expensive everything. He actually had a guy hired by him to visit all the hi-fi shows in the USA, in the UK, and so on, to listen for hi-fi for him. So that was how dedicated he was. He paid all the flight tickets, so go to that show, go to that show, here everything. So he had, I don't remember what he had. I don't think he remembers what he had before. But he heard our Model D, and he said, this is the sound I want. And then he came to our office in Singapore once a week to listen to his music. So he came usually Friday afternoon, sat down in our listening room and listened to his music, and went back again, and then he built his new house. Humongous house. And he said the first room he's going to do is his listening room. So I could decide the dimensions, everything like that. And this was the room that I designed for him. The first time, last time, absolutely last time I designed the room. But you see, there's nothing on the floor, hard walls. There's a little bit of damping on the side, but that's actually because the side speakers are also hidden there. There's a little bit of damping in the back. That's it. That's the ideal room. Sound in that room is phenomenal. So he built that room for the Steinway system. The woofers are in the corner. Everything, of course, time aligned with our technology and so on. And now he has a Model D in his bedroom. Bingo. So, more questions?
Is RoomPerfect available in the digital only?
Can only be done digital.
Right.
Cannot be done. But
As
you know,
digital equipment, separate digital equipment.
we don't have a separate box for room correction only, because it does not really make sense because then you have to go analog in and analog out. And that's not a clean way to do it. You have two conversions too many. So that's why we also keep, every time we do the volume attenuation in the power supply. So it's super clean, no noise and so on. More questions?
Are you doing any gain amplifier?
No. You know, the latest company, Purifi, they now make the highest performance Class D amplifiers. But if you make the real technology inside, GAN is not relevant. Our latest version of the amp has 0.4017% distortion from 20 Hz to 20 kHz. No GAN amplifier has that kind of performance. So GAN, if you make the proper design, will have no effect on the quality. But that requires you have an engineer like Bruno Putzis, who is the brightest guy in the world on Class D, with no comparison. So GAN cannot make a difference. We think about maybe going to GAN sometime because it's slightly more efficient. But that's the only thing. But it's typical for hi-fi, you know, if you find something that is more exotic, more expensive, must be carbon, nanotubes, whatever, you know, something more expensive. It's the same with speaker drivers we're making now at Purifi. We have a 10-inch. First breakup mode is 4-point-some kilohertz. Like a very good mid-range driver. It's a 10-inch. It's aluminum cone. Because we do the math before we make the cone. So mathematics, science is the way to go. But of course in hi-fi it's so much about materials and gold and silver and all of that. And if it is expensive, it must be better. If it is expensive, it must be better. If it's difficult, it must be better. If it's new, it must be better. If it's very rare, if it's the only thing in the world, it must be better, right?
Yeah.
But thank you very much for the question.
Can I have a question?
Sure.
Yeah, it's regarding Dolby Atmos. The whole world is now slowly moving towards Dolby Atmos.
Dolby Atmos, yeah.
What is your RoomPerfect status regarding the collaboration?
Yeah.
And towards the future?
Well, of course, with RoomPerfect, with the boundary woofers, we also do, thank you for the question, something very particular about handling of the bass. So, of course, we make multi-channel processors. Atmos, all these, DTS, whatever. But we do it differently than anybody else. Because what we do first, in a typical theater, we set up corner woofers, mid-high on the side. We combine the woofer and the mid-high to be one perfect system with fantastic impulse response, time response, frequency response. Full range. Then for the smaller speakers, surround speakers, or even for the left and right speakers, we do not want full range speakers for left, center and right. We absolutely do not want it.
Oh, why?
Because if you put a speaker there, it will have slightly worse impulse response than when it's put in the corner. And when we make a good woofer, it can easily go to 300 Hertz. It doesn't cost anything. And if we cut the mid-high speakers at 200 Hertz or 300 Hertz instead of 80 Hertz, we get about 14 dB less movement of the cone. So we get much less distortion. And when we have, let's say, for the center speaker, we cut that off at 200 Hertz. The rest comes from the left and right speaker in mono, but it is time aligned with the output of the center speaker. So the bass signal missing in the center speaker is put at a different time from the left and right speaker to coincide with the voice of the center speaker. So you sounds like a big speaker, You can hear the effect upstairs on our S system. It'll sound that the bass guitar is exactly where the speaker is, but that's not where the bass is. For surround speakers, let's say we have a side channel speaker. Over here we have a side channel speaker. We cut that at 200 Hertz also. And of course, we need frequency from 200 down to 20. That should come from here. But what we do is, the system automatically calculates, you're sitting there, that's your center position. So we send the signal from the right system and the left system 2 different times to coincide exactly with the overtones from that system. So there can be up to 16 channels of input to the left and right speaker to give you that bass. And when we test the system, you'll wonder, oh, it sounds like there's bass from this, because the bass is sent from left and right, and then it's calibrated together with that speaker. So our processor and the setup and so on appears to be super simple, but that's because all the technology we put inside. We don't show you all these graphs. And if you then decide, for instance, a center channel speaker, you increase the level, automatically you get exactly the right amount of bass to follow that. So you don't need to think about all these manual things.
So it will still sound full range to me sitting here, but without physically producing the low frequency from there.
We can make it sound like there's a cannon here without having the bass there. And I don't want more than 2 woofers. Absolutely. 2 full range systems. From that we do what we call psychoacoustic bass steering.
But in that case, will the sweet spot be pretty small?
No, in effect it will be very large still. You could think that the timing will be slightly off, but it's because of the character of the sound is so well matching. We were a little bit concerned about the same thing, but it works wonderfully, at least within 2 meters. And honestly, it's your theater, right?
Yeah, more or less.
And your friends, they will still be flabbergasted about the fantastic sound. You will have the best sound. That's fair enough, you paid for it, right?
All right.
But one of the things with RoomPerfect is that if you, after you do RoomPerfect, walk around in the room with RoomPerfect, you cannot find one spot in the room where it sounds worse with RoomPerfect than without RoomPerfect. Try that with any other system. So there's so many things in RoomPerfect that are difficult to understand, but it works. Okay. I think we have one more question. You're done? Okay. I'm sorry I speak too much. I always speak too much because that's because I'm so enthusiastic about what we're doing. And you know, all the engineers we have working for us, they are really, honestly, stupendously funny people to work with. I always feel like a total stupid idiot when I'm together with the engineers. But yeah.
That's how you know you're good.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. But thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.